Welcome to the Quantum Business Briefs podcast, a production of the Quantum Franchise Group. This is your podcast for bringing the dream of business ownership to life. And now here's your host, William Huffine.
Well, hello, family. I'm William Huffine. I am your host today here on the Quantum Business Briefs podcast or vodcast if you're watching it on YouTube. I'm the founder of the Quantum Business Community and the president of Quantum Franchise Group. And this episode today is part of our series that we call Franchise Fridays, where we focus on one specific company in a specific industry that might just be the exact fit that you're looking for to make the dream of business ownership become a reality. So again, thank you for being here. Make yourself comfortable. We're going to go ahead and jump right into today's episode. So I spend a lot of time almost daily, certainly weekly, presenting franchise concepts to clients all around the country. And one of the most fascinating concepts that I had the privilege of presenting to a client recently is Water's Edge Winery. Now, this is a concept where you have the opportunity to actually own a winery without owning the orchard or the grapes or whatever they call it. You don't have to own the land. You don't have to own the plants. You don't have to own the grapes and worry about all that stuff. You just have this really cool winery that you get to own and operate. So I'm excited to have with me today Ken Lineberger, who is the founder and CEO of Water's Edge Winery. So Ken, thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast. Happy to have you with me.
Okay, great. Thanks, William, for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, absolutely. I want our audience to hear all about this. So let's go ahead and kick things off by introducing your brand and telling the audience all about Water's Edge Winery.
Yes. So thank you, William, for that introduction. That was excellent. And I just want to introduce myself not only as the president of the company, but also the founder of the company. So I founded this company along with my wife way back originally in 2004. So we're coming up on our 20th year. The original company was based here in Rancho Cucamonga, still is in Rancho Cucamonga, California. And what we did was we created a winery in a suburban area without having to be attached to any vineyards. We do not do the agriculture. We don't grow the grapes. We don't do anything with that. We don't crush the grapes. All that is done prior to it arriving at our locations. And so what we've done is we've built up a global supply chain of the raw material, the varietal grape juice, Cabernet Sauvignon, Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc. I mean, you name it, we can make it, including some pretty exotic ones too that you probably haven't heard of. And we actually have all of the hard science done prior to it arriving at our location. So if you know anything about wine, the pH is balanced, the bricks or the sugar levels are correct. If it's a blend, it's already blended. So all our owners have to do is follow a process to make it into finished wine. It's repeatable, it's teachable, and it makes great quality wine. So we've been able to put these now, fast forward 20 years, across the country. We've got them from Long Beach, California, to Norfolk, Virginia, up to Kalispell, Montana, and down to Midland, Texas, and many, many points in between. So it's an exciting opportunity to really bring the winery to the people instead of the people having to go out into the vineyards and go to the wineries as we know today.
I love that. And I'm just appalled that I had such a difficult time thinking of the word vineyard. Thank you. It's certainly not an orchard. It's a vineyard. So I appreciate that. So what year did you begin franchising the concept?
So we began franchising it in 2012. So it took us 8 years to really create the model, know exactly what we're doing, how we're doing it, and make it so it's scalable and teachable, and had documented everything in a way that would allow us to share that with other people and get them in the business.
Yeah. What is your franchisee count right now?
We are at 15 with 3 more underway in terms of development being built out as we speak.
How many do you project you'll open in the next 12 months or so? Do you have that number?
Yeah, I do actually. So our goal is, my goal is to add 10 more to that number between now and the end of 2024. So we're looking to add 10 more people. So not a big list, we're not growing by hundreds or anything, but we want the right people in the system that can really represent our brand and do it well.
Yeah, I often explain to people that there are some systems out there that strategically plan to grow quickly, adding dozens, hundreds of locations a year. And then there are concepts such as yours that strategically plan to grow slowly and correctly. So I certainly respect that approach. Now, I remember from a previous conversation when you and I were meeting with one of my clients, you talked about some different models, some different food models, menu models from a bistro to a fuller sit-down type restaurant. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we have our focus has been on the wine for many, many years, as you can imagine. In fact, we didn't even add any food options, especially in relation as it relates to a kitchen being in there, until 2014. So that's a newer iteration, not brand new. It's been around now for about 9 years, and we finally evolved to the point now where we have a set of menus that we're using in all of our new locations, and it's a 3-tier approach. And the reason I wanted to do that versus just one size fits all is because sometimes the footprint, the size of the location, which can be as small as 3,500 square feet, just doesn't have the room to support a big full-size kitchen. Mm-hmm. Other owners come in with, deeper pockets, and they want to invest because they see the return, they see the opportunity on growing the sales significantly. And they want a larger kitchen to support more food items and support more volume through the place. So we have 3 different tiers of menu. On the smallest one, it's a simple bistro kitchen, no cooktop, no hoods or anything like that. I don't need a highly experienced chef in there, just somebody that has been doing it, or at least graduated culinary school recently. And it's mainly flatbreads, paninis, charcuterie, salads, and desserts. So it's meant to be a simpler menu, easier to manage. A lot of people really like that who don't have a food service background in their careers, because they feel confident that they can get a handle on that and be able to operate it correctly. We have a mid-tier where we add some more full-plated items to that, dishes that you might see in a restaurant, but not too many. And it is going to require a cooktop and a hood on that. So the cost goes up, a little larger square footage. You're probably going to need a little more experienced chef who's run a kitchen operation before at other restaurants. And then on the top tier, that's really designed for somebody that either comes into our system with prior restaurant experience, they know how to operate one, they know how the kitchen needs to operate, or they're willing to invest and hire in a general manager there that has that in their background and on their resume, and they're experienced and good at it. Because I would not want to put anybody in there. It's a complex enough operation that I wouldn't want to put them in there if they don't have that one of those 2 avenues to make sure the kitchen is run well. And that's much more full-plated items. I wouldn't call it quite a restaurant, but it's approaching that level of food options and menu options on their dining options.
Yeah, I love that you offer those 3 different options for folks based on their level of experience and investment ability. So that's great. One of the things that we're going to talk about twice, actually, we're going to talk about financials, and we're going to talk about it on the investment side, but we're also going to talk about it on the earnings potential side. And that's what we're going to dive into next. And before we go into this, I want to have just an educational moment for our viewers here who may not be familiar with the world of franchising. Every franchise system is required to have a document called a franchise disclosure document, which they provide to their potential franchisees. This is required by the Federal Trade Commission, and every state that they're operating in requires that to be filed with the state and approved. Now, part of that document is what's called an Item 19. Now, an Item 19 gives you the actual performance, financial performance of franchise owners in the system. It's probably not going to be all of the franchise owners. It could be some, but it could just be a sampling. But it's going to show you for the previous year how those franchise locations performed financially. It's important to remember that a franchise concept is not required to include an Item 19. They do have the option to leave that out. And sometimes there are some legitimate reasons for doing so. But what I like to share with my candidates and my clients that I'm walking through the system with, if a franchise concept has the Item 19, you can rest assured that they're being very transparent about the performance of those franchise units, and being able to really visualize what your earnings potential could be is a very important part of your due diligence. So given that background information, that educational moment, Ken, I'd love for you to talk with us a little bit about your Item 19.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks, William. And one of the things I'll add on there on the educational side is what I've seen out there in the franchise industry, and you've probably seen the same thing, is that the smaller a franchise system is, the less they usually will be able to publish an Item 19, because you have to have a big enough footprint, a big enough base to gather data that you can confidently tell people this is what is a range of expectations within the system. I generally think that if a system has more than 10 or 12 units, They should be publishing something in item 19. And if they have 30 or more units, there should be a lot of information included in item 19. So just as a guideline that I have an expectation for our system that once we reached over double digits, I started publishing our item 19. So it's been several years now that we've done that. So yeah, I'm happy to talk to you about our item 19. Is there something specific, William, that you want me to address, or to talk about some of the highlights?
Yeah, maybe just kind of walk us through some of the numbers in your item 19. What some of the expectations could be.
Sure. So one of the things I do also want to preface with is we've been an evolving franchise system over time, as any franchise system has to in order to grow and survive. And long ago, our original locations really didn't do over $1 million a year. They were very simple. They didn't have kitchens. You know, it was not an expectation of us or them that they would do it. It was small footprint. But as we've evolved and added more products, a larger footprint, we now have an expectation that we will not put a location out there that we don't believe is going to do at least $100,000 a month, over $1 million a year within the first 6 months it starts to operate. And I won't bring an owner in if I don't think they're capable of managing a business that is going to be over $1 million a year in terms of the annual revenue expectation. So we've been increasing that, and that's evident in the operations that we brought on, the operators we brought on board over the past 2 or 3 years. That's what we're seeing. We've really refined that. So, but the item 19 reflects the range of people who've been in my system for a long time, and they're fine with not doing that kind of volume, and I'm fine with it too. That wasn't an expectation that we set with them originally, so it's not fair to hold them to that. But my high water point on the system sales for 2022 sales is just a shy of $2 million. It's $1.927 $1 million. So that's where our expectation is. That's where the location should get to, is somewhere between 1.5 and $2 million after being open for a year or so. And that's what we're building to. That's what we're bringing into the system. So that's not an unreasonable expectation to have. On the low end of that, the average, the gross sales, actually, if you take everybody, the average for everybody, it's $666,000 for 2022. So that, again, I wouldn't want to bring somebody in now that would be doing $500,000 or, $750,000 in that range. I'd want a larger volume location, and I know our owners do too. That's what we're striving for now.
Yeah, good. Well, thank you for that. It's a very healthy item 19. I appreciate your transparency and being willing to share that with our candidates. Another question that I get asked a lot as I'm talking with folks is about ownership type. And in the world of franchising, there's typically 3 different types of ownership that you can anticipate. One is owner operator. You're right there, hands-on, running that business. You're very much present in the day-to-day operation of that business. There are also franchise systems that allow you to go semi-passive from the onset, from the day you open your doors. You could be semi-passive, have a manager running the business for you. And then there are other concepts that really want you to be hands-on for the first year or so, and then get to a point where they're comfortable with you handing it off to a manager and backing away from the day-to-day somewhat. So tell us about your expectations with ownership.
So nearly all of our locations are owner-operator. The important thing to understand about our concept is, unlike many other franchise brands, we're a passion play for people. That doesn't mean we're not a business and we care about producing profit. Of course we do. This is not a retirement business where you're hanging up your spurs and you just kind of want to live the good life. You got money in the bank and don't care about whether the business is profitable. That's not at all what I mean. What I mean is that wine is a passion for them. They love the lifestyle. They love talking about it. They love sharing their knowledge with not only their team to teach them more, but also our guests who come through the door. So this was their goal when they came into it, was that whatever they were doing, which often are white collar executives, these are people who've been, in a managerial role, often with larger companies, and they're tired of the corporate rat race, cubicle hell, as we've come to know it sometimes.
Right.
And they want to forge their own destiny in their latter, the second half of their career. And so it's important to note that that's the natural form of ownership here, is that they do want to be owner operators in the operation. So we embrace that. We do have one owner who is more or less absentee. I mean, he goes in on the weekends and He's involved with the staff. They know who he is. He's not completely detached. And that works well because he's got a strong management team there that knows what they're doing. They're experienced. And that's the downside of being absentee is you have to have a strong management team and processes that you're measuring and you're managing to in place, or it's not going to work well. So I would prefer if somebody is going to be an absentee owner in this business that they already are absentee owners in similar lines of business. In other words, more, hospitality or something like that, where they understand how to do that right. I wouldn't want somebody to do this as their first time ever, probably for owning a business and be absentee. That's a little riskier. The middle option where they work for a year and then they back off, that's also a strong possibility. So I think that's a good halfway in between those two steps. If they're capable of stepping away from whatever they're doing now to be able to do that, I would support that as well. So really any of those work for us, and that's how we operate.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I find that absentee ownership is a lot more rare in the food and beverage industry, the restaurant industry, than it is in some other industries. So it makes a lot of sense there. I like to, when we have these conversations, I like to talk a little bit about the day in the life of a franchise owner. And, if you're thinking about a restaurant, pretty straightforward. I mean, you go in, you prep the food, you cook the food, you serve the customers, and not a whole lot of I'm speaking from someone who's never run a restaurant. I started to say there's not a whole lot of nuance in there, but I'm sure there's more than I'm thinking about. But with your concept, you have this added component of winemaking. And so talk with us a little bit about what that day in the life is like for your franchise owner.
Sure. And also let me put a little more context in the winemaking, because one of the most common things I hear from people who are investigating us and talking to us early on is winemaking is sort of a black art. People don't know how it's done. To them, it's sort of magic almost. How do we get from a grape growing in a vineyard to this wonderful, I've heard it termed poetry in a bottle, with
right.
Alcohol. And frankly, I'm glad it's that way, because it makes my operation more appealing for people to come in and investigate it as guests. But from an ownership perspective, I want people to know that we have taken this process of winemaking and made it very simple to follow. It's a 4-stage process that we put the wine through to get it to a finished product. It does take a little bit of time, probably not as much as you might think. And we've documented it all. We train people on it, hands-on training, so that anyone, and I mean anyone, who can follow a process, that's the only prerequisite, can make great wine every time. So I want to reassure everybody, people watching this going, that sounds like a little too much for me. I know how to make a grilled cheese sandwich, but I don't know so much making Cabernet Sauvignon. So right. I assure you that if you can follow a process, I can teach you how to make great wine. So that being said, what's the day in the life? So there are two roles that our ownership has to decide if they want to fill both of them or just one of them. But these roles have to be in every location. One, of course, we talked about already, is a general manager, a GM, that manages the staff, manages the operations, does all that. So they, most of the time, obviously with owner operators, they definitely fill that role. But the second role, that they have to decide if they want to fulfill it or have somebody come in and get trained and let them do it, and that's being the winemaker. Winemaking in most of our operations is a part-time job. It's generally about 20 hours a week, give or take, depending on the volume and the location. So it's not a full-time, and that winemaker, if it is somebody not different than the owner, often will work the floor too, which is great, because then they know all about the wines and the processes, and they can share that excitement with the guests, and it helps sell more wine. So in many cases, our owners are both, at least for the first year, because they want to get their arms around the winemaking, how it works, and how wine is made in our system and the process before they bring somebody else in to do it. So that being said, besides the winemaking part of the process, if the owner is going to do that, that's a given, that their part of their week is going to be spent doing some winemaking in the operation. And how do we do it? By the way, you see these big stainless steel tanks behind me. This is our Kalispell, Montana location. No, I'm not there. That's a virtual background. But I've had people say, "Hey, that's pretty good for a business call. You can be sitting in the bar, Ken, and
right,
not sitting in the bar." But that is what our bigger tanks look like. We also have a set of smaller tanks that people make wine from, so we use both formats. So back to the day in the life. Really, outside of winemaking, there are some key responsibilities that all of our owners have to fulfill to be successful. The first, of course, is hiring interviewing, doing scheduling, doing payroll, because payroll is one of your biggest expenses. So you want to be in control of that and know who's working, is there overtime, things like that. That's really key, that they're very involved with bringing in the right team and creating the culture there. The second part of that is closely connected to it, and that's training. A big part of what we do and offer our owners is a host of training mechanisms. We have an online training portal that they can assign classes to their staff, and they have their own unique login. They go through video courses that we've set up and we've done. They take a test at the end to make sure they've retained what we're trying to train them with. We have flashcards that they use to train each other and train the staff. So we want all of our owners at least once a month spending training time with every one of their employees. They can do that individually, they can do it in a class, I don't care, but there's always more to learn, and there's always more to carry our brand forward and help people with. So that's the second part, is managing the staff, making sure the knowledge is there. The third important aspect of this business is being out on the floor as an owner. We call it table touching, and we want our owners on busier nights to be there, especially in the beginning, in the first year or so, to go out to every single table and literally physically put their fingers on the table and ask our guests questions, such as not just generic questions like, how's your meal? You won't get very good responses, or at least not good feedback from that. You want to ask, hey, I noticed you have that bottle of Chardonnay on your table. We just released that last week. What do you think? I'm interested in your feedback on it. And you're going to get candid feedback as an owner and see where your operation is doing well and where you need to improve it. So that table touching, talking to guests behind the bar, really is very important for our owners to take part in some parts of the operation. They have to do it all the time, but it needs to be done frequently within the winery. And then finally, the other part of what we teach our owners how to do is get out in the community. We have a saying in this franchise system that don't work in the business, work on the business. And that has many layers. And one of them is get out in the community. This is a fun business. You're probably going to be the only winery owner around, so you'll be popular. That's the one thing I will share with you. You become kind of a rock star in your community. So when you walk into a hotel to talk to the concierge and you say, I'm the local Water's Edge Winery and Bistro owner, I'd love for you to be able to send people down. Do you mind if I share a little bit about what we do down there? They're all ears. They're going to say, oh yeah, that's awesome. I've heard about you. You want to go to, not only local hotels, but the Chamber of Commerce, and be involved with that to help build a bigger network of people who are going to help bring people into your place. So there's a whole setup of things that we do to really encourage our owners to not just be stuck in the business, but actually spend time during the week out talking to other businesses and at events and things like that.
That's great. It takes a special kind of person to run a business such as yours, which leads me to my next question. Ideal candidate. I spend my day every single day in and day out, trying to find the perfect candidate for the perfect franchise system and make a perfect match. What kind of candidates do I need to be sending your way? How would you describe that perfect candidate or that ideal candidate?
Sure. So here's what I look for early on in conversations with people. The first thing I want to know is, are they passionate about wine? And what I mean by passionate is not knowledgeable. I don't care if they know a ton. In fact, it's fine if they don't, because we can teach that. We can put them through all our material. I have a director of training that is sommelier certification 2. So we can impart the knowledge to them, but what we can impart to them is the passion about the business. So if somebody comes into this and I ask them, what kind of wine do you like? And I get an answer like, I really don't drink, or I don't drink wine. I'm more of a beer person or more of a bourbon person. They're not a good candidate for us. I want wine to be a part of what they really enjoy. Of course, I'm a bourbon drinker too myself, and I'll have an occasional beer. I don't mean to be exclusive, but I want the passion to be there on the wine. The second thing that I really am looking for is folks who are sales and marketing driven. I found that in my system over time, the most successful owners have an understanding of the selling component of your business. You're out there marketing it. That's a lot of what wine is marketing, stories, being able to talk with people easily. You have to really have an affinity for people to want to be in this business. If you'd rather be in an office looking at spreadsheets your whole time, this is not the business for you. So I found that and this isn't going to be exclusive. If somebody's listening to this that is in this category and you feel like you still could fulfill the first part of what I said, by all means, let's talk. But for the most part, people who go into accounting and are CPAs or accountants, they generally don't tend to be a great fit in here, because they would rather be that person in the office looking at the technical details, the reports and all that. And that's fine, but it's not going to build your business quickly. You'll still have a good business probably, but it won't be as successful as we want it to be when you come into the system. So the other end of that, I've got somebody that's been in sales in the past, especially if they like being in front of people, love sharing with people stories. This isn't about pushing anything on anybody. It's just about sharing stories, and people love stories, and that's got to be what you're comfortable with to be successful. So if they are, by all means, we should be talking.
Like that. When we were talking earlier about the the day in the life, you touched on the training component that your franchise owners have available for the employees, for the staff to continue their training. That is often a common question that I'm asked by candidates. What kind of training am I going to receive before I even open my doors? And I'm sure that you have people coming to you who don't have that restaurant experience or that winemaking experience, and they need to feel comfortable that they're going to get all the training they need to be successful. So talk a little bit about your training program that franchisees go through after they have signed that agreement and leading up to the day they open their doors.
Sure. And I'm proud of this organization's completeness in how we help somebody get open from the day that they start looking for a location in the process until the day they open their doors and even beyond. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But let's back up even from the training. So one of the things that's unique about our model that most franchisors don't do that I'm aware of is when you're ready, when you're 90+% sure this is what you want to do, you've gone through your investigation, you've done validation, you've read the FDD, you're okay with it, all those steps that have to be done before you get to that level. At that point, we move to a deposit stage, and we ask for a $12,000 deposit towards the franchise fee. And in doing that, we then will engage our brokerage firm as well as my director of operations to start hunting for a location in the areas that they want to be in. And that's an extensive and exhaustive process that we use a lot of tools, a lot of demographic tools, things like that. We know what we're looking for. We will actually fly out to the location potential, talk with the representatives there, meet the new potential franchisee owner there, and really be on the ground. We don't just turn this over to them and say, okay, go find a location, let us know how it works out. That's not what we do. We want to be hands-on. We know what we need, and we know what our owners need. And we're very good at negotiating strong leases that are in their favor. So once we find a location, then they would they pay the balance of the franchise fee, and now they're a part of the system and they begin the formal training. Mm-hmm. So our training begins with my director of training, Art DeCaro. Again, he's got 11 or 12 years in the wine industry. He's done everything from being in the vineyards to making wine to being up on the floor, being on the front of house. So he knows everything about this business, and he's been with us for several years now. And so Art will set them up with a complete step-by-step phased opening requirements. So nothing is missed. And it's a shared system that our owners log into, Art is logging into, our other employees here that are involved with the opening also log into, so nothing gets missed. And we start with an online training program where they're going to go through, I believe it's 10 or 11 lessons now, that they do on their time, the owners do on their time, do it at home. They're video courses, and again, they get a quiz at the end of it, just similar like what we talked about. It's the same platform we use for employees of our locations. And then Art connects with them. Usually they have a weekly scheduled call to review what they learned, make sure it's stuck, answer questions. So it's very hands-on. They can go back and review the lesson again if they wanted to see something. And that the purpose of that is to, number one, really delve into the world of wine. What do you need to know about the where we bring our products in from, the wines, tastings, everything, it's basically almost like a mini sommelier course. The second part of what we do is business operations. What do you need to know to successfully operate this business? And that's the just as important. So some of the lessons are focused on operational stuff. Some of the lessons are based on wine knowledge. And then it's a broad overview of winemaking. How do we do it? Just broadly, not detail yet. Once they are through with those lessons, which usually takes a couple of months, people on vacations, I don't do it every single week. So, you might be out, even 3 months doing this online training. They also have curriculum that they have to study at home. So we send them books, we send them our operations manuals, our training manuals, and they should be becoming familiar with those, and Art's holding them accountable for that as well. And then once they've done that and they're less than 60 days from opening, we bring them out to California And we go through a week of hands-on training here where they're actually making wine in our smaller tank systems I mentioned earlier. And it's a hands-on process. So they're going to be actually doing the work, following the steps. We're just there to guide them so they'll actually know what they're doing. The final stage of the training occurs when they get their stainless steel tanks like the ones you see behind me installed. And there, one of our winemakers will fly out to their location and actually do each stage of the winemaking with them. So they'll make up to 4 trips to their location. And again, it's hands-on. Our owners are doing it themselves. We're there to guide them, help them, make sure they understand the instructions clearly. And we do multiple stages of each step when we go out the second, third, fourth time. So it's very complete, very overlapping. And by the time they get done with that, they are confident in their winemaking skills. I've never had an owner say, I still feel like I don't know what I'm doing. They all know what they're doing at that point and are confident in following the process. And we're there to help them if they need help to back it up. And then we move to the grand opening, and there's a lot of training that goes on around that. I can go into detail if you want, but I'll stop there, William, and see where you want to go next.
Yeah, no, that's great. And very comprehensive training. You know, folks often ask me, Bill, why should I invest in a franchise instead of just starting my own business from the ground up? And I always explain to them that whenever you invest in a franchise, you're getting a business in a box, and there's a whole lot of really good stuff in that box that's already been prepared for you and tested and tried. And one of the most important things is that advanced training as you move toward the opening of your business. But a second, equally as important component here is the ongoing support that you don't have when you're an independent business owner, the way that you do as being an owner in a franchise system. So talk a little bit about post grand opening, as your franchisees are, living the dream with a Water's Edge Winery. How do you continue supporting them?
That's a great question, and I love answering that question because our support system on the back end of the grand opening is pretty extensive. So I have a director of franchise support. She's actually a former owner in our system. She owned one up in the Colorado market for many years and came on board with us a couple of years ago. So she knows this business extremely well. And what her role is when we're done with the training, we're done with the grand opening, she begins a weekly call with that owner. And we have certain KPIs that we measure, we look for what we know what our other locations do. So we see if they're hitting those KPIs. And if they're not, the question's going to be asked, why not? What do we need to improve? Some of those are revenue driven and wine club member driven. Others are cost driven, cost structure driven. So we want it both the top line and the bottom line to be in an improving state after they open. So she holds them accountable to that with the regular calls. Those we eventually move to monthly calls, and then eventually, probably once a quarter or a couple times a year, she touches base with everybody. But she is always available to support any of our owners, answer questions. We do a lot of brainstorming with our owners and giving them ideas. And she's really good at that and really good at helping them be another set of ears and eyes and ideas that they can draw from, especially that's outside the business. Sometimes you don't see things that when you're sitting in the business that are easier with something else. So, and then on top of that, William, we have an extensive intranet system. When I say intranet, I mean it's a closed system. It's not available to the public. Only our owners can log into it. And everything material-wise for training, for menu ideas, for recipes, everything about this business, all that knowledge is captured in the intranet and organized. Art is responsible for that. My director of training, he does a great job at it. So it's all organized and easy to access information as our owners need it. We also do a monthly newsletter to every one of our owners, so they're always in the know. I don't ever want to hear from one of my owners, gosh, you guys did this months ago and I never knew about it. If it's important, it's in the newsletter. We also do a monthly conference call with all our owners, and most of our owners participate in that pretty routinely, and we record it, so those who weren't able to get on, they can listen to it later. And then we do an annual meeting. We just had it this past April. We're just in the beginning processes of planning it for next spring or early summer. And so we try to go once a year to wine country somewhere in the United States. So in 2021, we went to Paso Robles up in the central coast of California, or the central area of California. And then we'll go visit one of our winery locations the other year. So everybody gets the chance to see how another operator looks, what they're doing. We have them teach part of the conference, and it's very interactive. So our owners really see. So this one coming in 2024, we'll be back to the wine country. And so our owners really like that getaway and get a break and get treated really special there in wine country.
You're certainly demonstrating something that I say quite often to folks is that whenever you are a franchisee with a good system like yours, you are in business for yourself, but not by yourself. So it sounds like you do a really great job of taking care of your franchise owners. I want to start bringing this home by going back to the whole money topic here. Now we're going to talk about the investment. And I want to offer another educational moment for our viewers and listeners who are unfamiliar with the franchise world. As you begin exploring franchise concepts, you're often going to see what's called an investment range, low number to a high number with a dash in between. And there's three things that make up that investment range. One is the franchise fee. That franchise fee is what gets you the business in the box, and it gets you the brand. It gets you the everything that comes in that box. The second portion of that investment range is your hard assets, your equipment, your supplies, your real estate, your build out, your furnishings, all of those things that have to come together for you to get to grand opening. And then the third portion of that investment is initial operating capital. Most systems like to see you have 3 to 6 months or so of operating capital. Some systems want to see you have more. Just to make sure that, number one, you've still got a roof over your head as you're scaling up the business, but also that you have funds to invest into marketing and promotion and everything that's necessary to really ramp your business up toward profitability. So that said, Ken, talk with us a little bit about the investment range for a Water's Edge winery.
Sure. So the range is going to be in our, again, refer to our FTD, our current FTD for the actual numbers, but approximately the expectation should be, this is going to be somewhere in the range of 800,000 to about 1.3 million. That is all in, that's all the equipment, all those things you just mentioned, William, working capital, the franchise fee, everything you're going to have to pay and have money in the bank when it's all said and done. Now, I want to point out that that range is a little broader than others, and the biggest variable, which is completely in the owner's control when they decide what location they want, is going to depend on three main things. Number one is the size of the location they choose. We start at 3,500 square feet, and if you want to stick to that, the business model works just fine. But many of our owners see the opportunity to do private events at their winery and not close off to the public the rest of the winery, so they need room to be able to host 30, 40 people in an area of the winery. They can do private events, birthdays, anniversaries, celebrations, things like that. So they want to expand beyond the 3,500 footprint, but that's completely within your control based on your budget and your dreams of what you want to do. The second factor in that is the condition of the building. Was it a restaurant prior? And we can turn this around without a lot of cost because we can use a lot of the infrastructure that's already there. Maybe even there's equipment that we can reuse if it meets our standards and can be used in our kitchen processes we've developed. Fine, then we want to do that. On the other end of that scale is a brand new first generation space where it's what's called a vanilla shell. There's nothing in it, no plumbing, no electrical, all that has to get run and done. That's very costly. But then that leads me to the third part of what controls the cost of that range is how much can we squeeze out of the landlord. And believe it or not, the more that it's going to cost to get it open, the more we generally get favorable what's called TI allowance, tenant improvement allowance from the landlord that will offset the larger dollar amount you have to spend on a first generation space or a space that needs serious rehabilitation before it can be occupied. So once we know where an owner's at with their loan level that they're comfortable with, the overall project cost budget, once we know what that is, then we know what we're looking for. So if somebody's got 950,000 and we can't go over that, then that just becomes a criteria, and the sizes of the space and the amount of work that's going to have to be put into it. And we make sure that we find a space that's not going to put them over budget. On the other hand, somebody comes in and says, look, I'm approved for 1.3. Let's build something big. Let's make it special. That's great. Then we know we've got a higher budget. We're going to look for a little larger space, and we'll just make the budget work. So that range is completely within our owner's control. It is not some random number that you get dropped on you and here you go, you got to pay this now.
Yeah. That's good. Well, Ken, we have covered a lot in the last 30 or 40 minutes, a lot of great information here that I can't wait to get out in front of our audience. And I want to just give you an opportunity to say a few last words as we wrap up. Anything that we missed that we shouldn't have missed, or anything you'd like to share as we close it out?
No, I think it was pretty complete. This is a unique business model. There's nothing else like it in the United States. Nobody else franchising wineries. We're it. So if it's a good fit for someone, contact us, and contacted us through William, and let us know you're interested.
All right. Well, yeah, we'll have information in the description of this video on YouTube and in the description of the audio on Spotify of how you can move forward and apply for candidacy with Water's Edge Winery. But Ken, thank you so much. Great hanging out with you again. I've enjoyed every conversation we've had so far. You haven't let me down yet. So looking forward to sending some candidates your way, and I wish you much success as you continue scaling the company.
Thank you, William. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Quantum Business Briefs. I want to wrap up just by telling you a little bit about our sponsor, Quantum Franchise Group. We are a full-service franchise brokerage, and much the same way that a real estate brokerage helps an aspiring homeowner to find the perfect home, we help aspiring business owners or even experienced business owners to find the perfect franchise opportunity. We take an integrity-first approach. We are not in the sales business. We are in the relationship business, and we're committed to putting your needs first and helping you find the opportunity that is the absolute best fit for you. So if you'd like to connect, we'd love to work with you. Everything that we do at no cost to you. You can learn more about us at quantumfranchisegroup.com, or you can simply text the word freedom to 815-885-5475, and that'll begin an initial conversation. Thanks again for being here today. I hope you have an amazing today, an amazing tomorrow, and an even better day after that. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Quantum Business Briefs podcast. If you'd like to be a guest on our show, text the word podcast to 815-885-5475. We'll see you next time, but for now, be well, do good, and make it an amazing day. Bye.